Hey everybody, Joe Murray just sitting here. Show number 19 now. Um, it's been 19 consistent shows. We got another guest today in Marshall Hook. We'll bring him in just a second here. Just want to give you the lineup one more time for this week. We've had a good week. Some good stuff, some good guests. Will Brinson, he was Monday. Christian Arkin was on Tuesday. Kaufman flaked.
What?
So we rescheduled. So Michael Hurley was yesterday. Marshall Hook's today. And tomorrow we wrap up the week with former Bruins goaltender, current Nesson analyst Andrew Raycroft. He'll join the show tomorrow at noon, and I'm ready for that one. I can't wait for that interview. We'll go in depth tomorrow with the Razor. Because if you remember, that was the guy that was here before Tuukka Rask, and obviously Tim Thomas as well. So a lot going on today. If you want to chat into the show, there's a chat feature. You just chat right in. Whatever you want. You got a beef with me. You got a beef with Marshall Hook. You chat it in. We'll pull it up. We'll discuss it. Parental advisory, of course, always on this show. And you can hear all the previous programs on Spotify, YouTube, and on iTunes. Just search Just Sittin Here. So today we bring in our guest. His name is Marshall Hook. He is from 98.5 The Sports Hub. He is from Channel 7. He is from Parts Unknown right now. He is a North Shore resident, a father, potential selectman. He is on the show today, just sitting here. Hello, Marshall.
I'm all those things and more, Joe.
Good afternoon to you. I see it looks like a nice day outside.
I mean, it's New England in April. For one more day anyway. So this is pretty much what we expect. You know, a nice wet sheen out there, gray skies. It's cold. Just what we look for at these times.
So, Marshall, I think you may have at least talked about this before. But one of the questions I've been asking everyone who joins the show, if you could only be quarantined with one person that you work with at your office, your part-time office.
Yep.
Who would that one person be?
Well, I mean, it's easy to pick a lot of people it wouldn't be. You know, the Zolaks and Felgers of the world. I don't think I'd go with that. I think the guy who is most kind of level-headed, non-obtrusive, you know, he could do his thing, I could do mine. I feel like Tim McCone and I could get along just fine. He'd sit over in one corner, I'd sit over another. It's the joke everyone's been making for 6 weeks, but I was built for social distancing. Like, this is perfect for me. Not having to actually, you know, go places and talk to people is something that that I fully embrace. I hate small talk. I hate it so much. I've learned to do it. It's like one of those things you need to have in life, to sit there and have small talk conversations, but I loathe it so much. So all of that is to say, I think that Tim McCone and I maybe come from you know, the same sort of place in life in that way, and so I think he and I could get along. I've not discussed this with him, so for all I know, he's somewhere just panicking and aghast at the notion of living with me, which I wouldn't blame him for.
Yeah, and one of you guys could sit in one van, right? Because
yes.
you know, right now I believe his office is currently an SUV, and you've been known to drive an SUV as well. So maybe that's how you guys could hang out, like social distance hang out.
That's true. We could just be each in our station vehicles, and that would be fine. We wouldn't actually have to cross paths at all.
So I'm going to ask you one question, and then I want to get into like your personal life a little bit, and then we'll shoot the breeze about everything that's happening in sports. Obviously, the news today: Andy Dalton has been released from the Cincinnati Bengals. The Patriots are one of two teams that seem to be interested. Them and the Jaguars. You know me, I like to look at the odds. The odds have the Patriots as the favorite to land Andy Dalton, the favorite to land Cam Newton. What would be your thoughts if the Patriots did pick up Andy Dalton, and would that change any of your opinions on Jarrett Stidham and what they've been talking about?
Well, I have no particular great love for Andy Dalton. I feel like, I mean, if I'm sitting there and I have a choice between Cam Newton and Andy Dalton, I don't know how you don't take the guy that took his team to a Super Bowl, who won an MVP, whose major problems these past couple of years have not been performance, but have been injury, right? Unless he's somehow not recovered from all of that, but I believe that he would be. At the same time, I get the idea, or I have espoused the idea that one of the strengths of Bill Belichick and, the Patriot system is, in theory, he and Josh McDaniels can take a player, one of these broken players, and fix them. Or at least that's what we've been led to believe, that they can build an offense around a guy and bring out the best of him. So maybe he's that guy. Maybe Andy Dalton would become a Pro Bowl quarterback who could actually have success, playoff success in that sort of scenario. But I got to tell you, if we're going to take a flyer on a veteran, I would much, much rather that be Cam Newton than Andy Dalton. I would have rather that had been Jameis Winston than Andy Dalton. He's no longer an option, but I just can't get jacked up about Andy Dalton. If my choice is Jarrett Stidham or Andy Dalton, that's the scenario where I'll take Stidham.
I agree. I think Stidham's their guy. Dalton's been linked to the Patriots ever since Peter King has brought that up. I think Dalton's had success in his career. He's done well, but in primetime games, he's sucked. And it really is bad, his numbers in the playoffs. Like, really bad. 0 for 4. Not good. And that's something that would just literally throw me off right away for him. But, again, to your point, I feel like they could bring in anyone. They could literally bring up anybody off the street and I think make them a decent quarterback. They've done it so far, at least in the Bill Belichick run. So, if it was for no money, and it was more of a Hoyer or Dalton situation, I probably like Dalton in that position.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you remove Jarrett Stidham from this and you're telling me that my choice is Dalton or Hoyer, well, then, yeah, give me Dalton. But while I don't believe that Jarrett Stidham is anything, they, by all accounts, seem to. And so I would much rather see that. Or, frankly, one of these, the Jamar or whatever his name is, undrafted guy. I'd rather see Stidham fight with that guy than Andy Dalton be a part of any of this.
And that's another thing too that I think some people forget is, like, I think Belichick wants to go with the guy that he found, he drafted, he developed, and went from there. Like, again, Tom Brady's the perfect choice. Replaced Drew Bledsoe. Like he loved Jimmy Garoppolo for a period of time. Jacoby Brissett was here. Like, I think they'd rather go with the guy that they trained that doesn't have bad habits from somewhere else. And I just feel like that in general. Like, whenever they sign free agents, they don't really always give the money to the guy like Kyle Van Noy, right? A guy that played somewhere else. They brought him here. He played well, gets paid somewhere else. They seem to take care of the guys that they drafted, the Devin McCourties, the Patrick Jungs. And I feel like kind of move on from the guys that maybe they coached up a little bit. So I feel like there is something to that. I still think Dalton's a quality quarterback, though. So if the Jaguars pick him up, fine. But I just feel like it goes against everything we just said and everything that they've said about Jarrett Stidham, which brings up my next question. Tom Brady's no longer here in New England. 20 years, Marshall. So where were you 20 years ago when this all happened? And are you looking forward to the post-Tom Brady era?
I mean, where was I 20 years ago? Just about to get married, I guess. Living in Salem, Massachusetts, in the process of buying a house in Lynn, where we then spent the next 17 years. That's, I think, where I was 20 years ago. Certainly no parent to kids at that point.
Or birds.
The angry birds behind me who are quiet for hours at a time. And then whenever I start doing something like this, they start to chatter. I think I am looking forward to a post-Tom Brady era. Not that I don't think Tom Brady this coming year will not be better than probably anybody that the Patriots put in there. But from just like a storytelling, like I'm ready for the new season of the Patriots that moves on from the Tom Brady character. I think that, and from a purely football standpoint, or at least the management of the football team, the owner has put Bill Belichick in charge, and I think it's clear that Bill Belichick was ready to move on. I think it's clear that Tom Brady was ready to move on. While they had some degree of success last year in the regular season, clearly the postseason wasn't what they were hoping for. But from a purely enjoyment standpoint, do you feel like anybody on that Patriots team had fun last year? Do you feel like Tom Brady enjoyed that year in any way? Do you feel like Bill Belichick enjoyed that year in any way? And there's a level to which if those guys aren't enjoying the game, then it comes off. Like, I mean, I went to that Miami game that ended the season, and it was joyless, not only in that they lost, but it was joyless throughout. Like, everyone kind of knew it was Tom Brady's last regular season game, even if at some level they didn't believe it. There are times when you need to turn the page. And I feel like that team reached that point last year. And maybe Tom Brady's skills don't say that you need to turn the page, but everything else about it was it's a time to turn the page situation.
Yep. I agree with you. I'm looking forward to it. I think it brings a little more, I don't know, it's kind of like a little buzz into like the whole Patriots and this whole offseason just in general. And I get some more stuff for you when it comes to the Patriots. But Marshall Hook here on Just Sitting Here. I started my broadcast journey back in 2007. I went to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. My second day of class, my teacher was a guy named Marshall Hook. He came up here and said, "Hey guys, it's my last day, but I'm going to teach you what I know." And,
that's true. You were part of my last class at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Do you remember it though? Do you remember meeting me at all?
I think I actually do, Joe. And it may just be that you physically stand out in a room. So I think I remember that. And I actually have memories of the last class because it was, in fact, the last class. Teaching at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting was something I think I did for 5 or 6 years or so. And I really, at the end, having nothing to do with you as or anyone as students, I just didn't enjoy it anymore. And so I was ready to move on. And it didn't take up a lot of my time. I think the first class you and I had together wouldn't have been my last because I think I taught a 3-class thing. So it would have been my last series of classes. But it just, I felt like, I don't know if I was faking it or I felt like part of my problem with the Connecticut School of Broadcasting at the time was they made everyone take everything. And there were tons of people who weren't interested in doing news writing and presentation, which is what I was teaching. And so imagine sitting there in front of a group of whatever it was, 20 people, and like 5 of them are interested in what you're doing. And the other 15 are like, can we move on? Who is this guy? We don't care. And so that was why. Like if you're teaching at a college, people have chosen to take your course on what it is. And so I think it's a completely different vibe versus the CSB model, which works for them. And a lot of people enjoy it. But as a teacher, it just didn't work for me. But yeah, I remember you, Joe.
Yeah. And I was only going to say, like, for me, my experience there, what was good is I met some good people and I got connections and got an internship out of it. One of my other teachers was John Anik, who got me a job at 1510, and he's now broadcasting UFC fights with Joe Rogan in Vegas constantly, and is making like millions of dollars a year. So, but those connections though, they go a long way. I used to hear you on the WEEI Sports Flash, and I know you were a part of that at one point. But I want to go like way back, Marshall. Like I don't think people know like this about you, but you were born in, was it Argentina? Where were you born? And like how?
No, I was born in New Jersey. I lived
Jersey,
in Argentina for a couple years during my high school years. My junior and senior years in high school, I went to what was called an international school in Argentina. But I was born and raised in New Jersey for up through kindergarten, lived in Texas for 4 years after that. Then we moved back to New Jersey. And then I did 2 years in Argentina. And all of that, pretty much, that takes me through my high school years. I am the rare person that has a single college degree, but 2 high school diplomas, because my time in Argentina was very fun. And I got grades just good enough to graduate high school, but not good enough to get me into any college that I wanted to get into. So I went to a snobby prep school for a postgraduate year, in which I earned a second high school diploma. So I got through college in 4 years. Took me 5 to get through high school. But college is where I came to Boston University, the College of Communication. Arrived there in September of 1990. And that's where my first, I mean, I think the first time I ever came to Boston was to visit BU the year before. Came once for summer orientation, then I moved here. So that 90 is where my Boston life begins.
Who would have thought? And that was a good run for those BU Terriers, right? Well, 94 I know was really good, but BU was a powerhouse hockey team. Were you like in broadcasting over at BU? Did you like do radio and stuff there?
Well, I was in the College of Communication, so it's kind of funny. Like a lot of people who are in sports radio or sports journalism were people who loved sports as kids or played sports in high school the way you did, or even in college. You know, I actually came to sports as a drama nerd. I was a guy who was in plays, and I did all of that in high school. And so nearing the end of my high school career, I just said, I was going to be an actor. And my mother, bless her soul, looked at that and said, that is a wildly impractical thing to try to be, and tried to find something that would interest me in that arena, but wasn't trying to be an actor. And so she kind of led me toward this idea of being in broadcast, being on TV, working in that arena. And so that's what I went in school to do. I did a little radio my freshman year, but then I was behind the scenes for the vast majority of my college career. Though I did remember today, I was the host of a BU TV show for like 4 episodes my freshman year. And then after that, it was all behind the scenes till the very end. And that's when I decided I wanted to be a reporter. And then fast forward a few years, I happened to get a job covering sports, but I completely came at it from a broadcast standpoint, not at all from being a sports fan.
And this is what these kids don't understand, is that like in order to get on the, like now you can do a podcast, right? And just put it out on Twitter or Facebook and everybody can hear you. But like if you want to get a job in this business, you gotta start somewhere, run a board. You gotta go fetch coffee for a little bit. You have to do these behind the scenes things. And that's eventually how you get on air, because if you have availability, obviously that is your best ability. I will say that week in and week out here on the show. So I'm curious, how did you hook up? So I know you did Spanish Red Sox for a while. You ended up at Metro, which you did like traffic and sports updates and things like that. But how did all that begin for you?
So my first job out of college was working for Channel 68, a television station that was owned by BU. I was an intern there near the end, and then I moved that straight into working there as the driver of the intern van. Was my first job in TV. But being there, and they're paying me like $5 an hour, they also used me behind the scenes doing some writing and producing type things. Then they fired me because I had a bad attitude. Story for a different time. Really? It's not wrong that I had a bad attitude, but I think my bad attitude was deserved. It didn't work out for me, though, because they had all the power and fired me. So I actually got out of it for like a year and a half, worked in an office, and then decided I needed to get back to it. And so at that time, now we're talking late 90s, probably 96, 97, somewhere in there. Local cable was much bigger a thing. There was a lot of kind of production from that standpoint. Your Channel 3 was owned by a company called Media One, which eventually became Comcast through all these different cable mergers. And they decided that they were going to create basically a programming venue, taking all of the different Channel 3s, and for like 3 hours a night, all of their different Channel 3s in the different towns would play the same thing. And they actually put some money, not a lot, but put some money into producing content for that. And so I basically went to work at Arlington Community Cable doing their weekly newscast. And then we started covering high school sports. right around then is also when watching video on the internet, all of this makes me sound incredibly old, by the way. Watching video on the internet was becoming something that people could actually do. And so Comcast, or Media One, as it was then, in the business of selling the ability to do that, wanted to create content to get people to go. And so they created, again, high school sports, because that's something people would want to watch at a local level. So I was a freelancer covering high school sports all over the place. One of the studios I worked out of was in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and I was covering a lot of Merrimack Valley sports. A radio station up there, WCCM, owned by Curt Gowdy at the time, 1,000 huge watts, was looking for a morning sports anchor. They hired me. I think I was making $2.35 an hour, which is not me in the 50s making $2.35 an hour. It was me in 1998 making $2.35 an hour. But I basically did all of these things at once. I worked at the radio station in the morning. I did the covering high school sports in the middle of the day. There was about a 6 or 8 month period where I was working 8 hours a morning in Methuen, then driving to Fall River, Methuen, Fall River, to be the sports anchor for their nightly 6 o'clock newscast, doing that every day while living in Salem. So I would get up in Salem, I would drive to Methuen, I would drive from Methuen to Fall River, then back to Salem, and basically in time to like go to bed and then repeat the same thing the following morning. At some point, I needed to just have one job. I chose the radio station. Metro was this is a much longer answer than you wanted, but I've been doing this a little while. Metro was, CCM was a client of Metro, so I talked to them every day. And eventually I'm like, I hate this place. You got to get me out. And they hired me, and that's how I ended up working there. And that's how I ended up on WEEI.
So you got, yep. And you also worked with John Wallach.
Yes, that's where I first met John Wallach. He was doing middays at EEI when I got there. Pete Shepard had just left for middays to do the afternoon to take Sean Grandy's spot there. And John Wallach was the sports director at Metro. So he is, in fact, the one who put me on WEEI the first time. My first ever sports flash was for the Imus in the Morning show. They did one local sports flash at the end of Imus before they went into local programming on EEI. And so that was the first one I did.
I think that might have been $5.90 at the time before $8.50, I believe, right? Maybe?
No, they were on $8.50 at that point.
Okay.
But they hadn't launched Dennis and Callahan yet. I think they were still maybe a year away from that. 98 or 99 would have been when I made my EEI debut.
Then you did that for years, and then obviously Metro went down, and you ended up over at the Sports Hub.
I did. It was beautiful because Metro was bought by Clear Channel, not a great company. They're known for firing people, and in fact, that's what they did. They fired all of us, everyone. They just basically came through one day and like, all of you gone. And so I was out, and so the first thing I did, obviously, was reach out to all of the PDs at my client stations. And I sent a note to Mike Thomas, and I've told Mike Thomas this and told this story over and over again. There were lots of people who didn't respond at all, or responded with, hey, that's tough to hear. I'll keep my ear out. Mike Thomas responded, and I checked it recently, and I can confirm, in about 90 seconds, I sent him an email. He clearly sent it right back and said, I'll hire you. I don't know what hours I have, but if you want to do headlines, come on over here. I'll give you some hours. And so he hired me part-time on the spot the day after I was fired by Clear Channel.
That's a good story.
Yep.
You know how many people like grind to get into the sports?
I understand it. Like, there are the people who've been trying to get it in for years. And I'm like, well, I sent an email and I was hired 90 seconds later. I'm sorry. Well, what can I say? But it's why I'm older than all of you. I think a lot of people are trying to get in there without the background that I had. Listen, I think about, I've been lucky enough to have an entire career, with the exception of those couple years in an office, in broadcast in some form or another. But I'm like a utility guy, right? I've never been the guy at any point, but I've still managed to cobble together enough jobs across this entire time to make a career out of it. And I'm fine with that. Like you and I get a lot of the same Twitter hate, like people like, oh, fill in flash guy. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but I am one and you're not. Like, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. I've got all of the work that I need right now, and I enjoy doing it. I don't think I'm ever going to take Mike Felger's place, but I don't aspire to take Mike Felger's place. I'm currently content with what I've got going right now.
All right, that's Marshall Hook. That's the story. So for those people like, what has Marshall Hook ever done in his life? Just go listen to the Just Sittin Here podcast, and you can.
You get a much longer story than you probably care.
You know what
hear.
though, the listeners liked it, and we'll go from there. All right, so we got your story out of the way, the Andy Dalton stuff. I have a boatload of questions that I think you could answer. The All-Decade team came out yesterday for the Patriots.
Yes.
It was not interesting.
No.
So did anything on that list, did anything stand out for you when it came to the All-Decade team?
Well, I like that Julian Edelman got to be on there twice.
Oh, yeah.
You get 2 spots on it. Like, you couldn't have just decided to put somebody else in there for the fun of it.
Why not Matt Slater?
Matt Slater's on there as well. So the special teams has both Julian Edelman and Matthew Slater.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Julian Edelman's probably your best return guy. I mean, it's not Cyrus Jones, but you don't think you could have found just somebody else to put there? I'll be honest. I don't. And I had a friend ask me if I was going to talk about. I see that comment. The comment caught me off guard.
Is that something you want to discuss?
Yeah, we'll come back to the All-Decade team. So it's funny. I actually am fine with it. So I coached youth soccer for a long, long time. I got into it quite accidentally when my daughter was 6 or 7 years old. She was on, that just magnet ball team. And the coach literally moved out of town in Lynn in the middle of the season. And they're like, any parent want to do this? I'm like, this is easy because all you do is you stand there when they kick the ball out of bounds, you go, new ball. I'm like, I can do that. That's no problem. And so I signed on and I finished the season. And at the end of the year, they're like, do you want to come back next year? I'm like, yeah, sure. What I did not know is next year you actually had to be a coach. But ultimately, I did it well enough. And I ended up coaching youth soccer for both my daughter and my son. And I would stop when they got to a point where I felt like they needed real instruction. I'm like, I don't know it well enough to do that. But when I moved to Topsfield, I thought, well, I'm probably done now because nobody here knows me, and that's fine. But they asked me immediately to be a coach. And maybe it was because I had been the president of Lynn Youth Soccer, and so they must have thought I knew a lot about soccer. But so fine. And I did it for 2 seasons. 2 years, which is actually across 4 seasons. And then last year, or maybe it was even just this past fall, got to the time of year where I'm waiting for, the roster to be sent to me. And I'm like, I haven't seen the roster. And they're like, oh yeah, we decided to give you the season off. And I'm like, oh, wait, what now? I get the season off. And what happened is we live in a tri-town. A lot of stuff in Topsfield is actually between Topsfield, Middleton, and Boxford. And they got to a point where the 3 towns were coming together and they picked coaches and they didn't pick me. And at first I was a little like, I'm hurt by this. Like, why didn't you pick me? And so I reached out. I'm like, so does this mean I'm not coaching anymore? And they, 2 of the people like, you know what? No, we'll just add you as an assistant coach to the team that your son is on. And then those coaches like, no, we're all set. We don't need an assistant coach.
So you got squeezed out.
I got squeezed out. I was a little miffed at first. I'm like, I don't know what happened. But then I quickly discovered that I no longer had to run practices. I no longer had to worry about whether or not the kids were going to show up for. I was able to just sit there and watch a soccer game. I got to know at least one of the 2 coaches my son had. And in the end, I was perfectly fine with all of it. Now I don't miss it. But in the moment, it's like one of those things, when you don't make the decision, it's like, well, what happened here? Ultimately, I'm perfectly fine with it, but in the moment, I was a little bit like, I just got fired from being a youth soccer coach. How does that happen?
Interesting. Well, I'm glad that one came out there. Feel free to chat in any other good stuff during the broadcast here. I don't care about the all-decade team.
Well, this was my point. I don't
Okay.
care about it. I don't care about all-decade teams. I don't care about teams Hall of Fame. Like, I could care that Bill Parcells is not in the Patriots team Hall of Fame, which he absolutely should be, and it's ridiculous that he's not, except that I don't care about team Hall of Fames. And I question at what level players do. I guess if you're a player who are never, is never going to make the actual Hall of Fame, then the team Hall of Fame is kind of nice. I'm sure it is, in fact. And so I don't want to take away from it from that point of view. But as a fan, I just feel like it's a lesser Hall of Fame. And I'm not making any Hall of Fame ever. I'm not making the Broadcasters Hall of Fame or the Massachusetts Broadcasters Hall of Fame. If there were a Sports Hub Hall of Fame, I'm not making that. All of that is fine. As I said before, I'm content with my role in this world. But I can't get amped up about an all-century team or anything. I do think the one thing I take away from it, the fact that it's not filled with, all superstars from top to bottom. Obviously, Tom Brady's on there. Obviously, Rob Gronkowski's on there and Julian Edelman. So there are huge, all-time NFL guys on that list. But there are a lot of people who aren't. And I think that's it speaks well to the fact that the Patriots as a team had quite the decade. And the fact that they didn't do it, they didn't need a bunch of Randy Mosses to do it, says something about the team.
Okay. Moving on. Jimmy Garoppolo traded. I know some people didn't like it, but the return is now official, or kind of official. They got Christian Sam, Joanne Williams, Damian Harris, Jarrett Stidham, and then they got a 4th and a 6th round pick. That 4th round pick is going to turn out to be Dalton Keene that they drafted this year. And the 6th round pick, I believe, was Justin Herron, a tackle from Wake Forest. So is that return still worth trading a guy that played in the Super Bowl a year ago?
I mean, I guess he wasn't going to stay here, right? Even if you'd done the franchise thing, even if you'd done that, which you were never going to do, but even if you were, at some point he was going to leave. The timing just didn't work out. I will admit that right up until now, I hadn't realized that Jared Stidham was part of the return of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yep.
I like that. I mean, if Bill Belichick is correct in what we think, because he hasn't come out and said, nor will he, that Jared Stidham is his starting quarterback. But if he is, as we think he's going to be, and if he's good enough, as Bill Belichick would assumedly think he is, well, then, yeah, I guess if you got rid of the guy who might have been the next guy, but the timing didn't work out, but you turned that into the next guy, then that's fine. That's fine. So I guess it's an incomplete right now, but if Jared Stidham turns out to be a serviceable NFL quarterback with whom you can win, because I think that's Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not a star, but he's a better than average NFL quarterback, or maybe by some people's estimation, just average, but somebody with whom you can win, then sure, you've just extended the timeline and you're doing it for less money.
And of course, they did win a Super Bowl since trading Garoppolo.
Indeed. I mean, that's the thing. Like, at this point, you can't really debate the making the move. You can debate, I guess, the return, which is what we're discussing. But ultimately, they won another Super Bowl. So I think it worked out okay.
All right, moving on here. Baseball could be back. Could be back around July 4th this year. There's new proposed baseball divisions that are out there, which I think could favor the Red Sox in a 10-team conference for them. Like, do you miss baseball? I know you're kind of cornered in sometimes as a baseball guy.
Mm-hmm.
But like, do you miss baseball at this point? And I know there's so much going on in the world. There's other things to think about, but like me, I kind of missed opening day, but it really isn't bothering me that there is no baseball. But what do you think about baseball coming back in the new proposed baseball division?
Well, I'll say this. I was completely, given what the Red Sox did in this offseason, I was completely ready to not care about baseball at all. I didn't like this Red Sox team. I didn't like what they were doing. I didn't like the bridge year, even though I liked the idea of a bridge year. I feel like they were being disingenuous about it and didn't just come out and say, this is what we're doing. We need to reset for a variety of reasons, and that's what we're doing. Trading away Mookie Betts was not necessarily something I disagreed with, but the fact that they used him as a salary dump for David Price, therefore, got much less for him than they should have. All of that I had issue with. But now the fact that it's gone and I haven't been given the choice to ignore them, if that makes sense. Like, I wanted to actively ignore them. I wanted them to be playing and me not care about it. Now that I've not been given that choice, I think I'm ready for them to come. I would watch a Red Sox game now. I would root for the Red Sox. This has worked out well for them. Nobody cares about the cheating. It's worked out even better for the Astros, who are going to have a miserable season of every team in baseball throwing every pitch at them over and over again. Now that none of that's going on, I would love for them to come back. And it's not going to be a real season. If they come back in July in weird divisions, and it doesn't matter. Like, too much time has gone by for it to be a real season. It would really be playing for the sake of playing, which at some level is what they do just anyway. But I think you know what I mean. It would be, this isn't a true indication of who the competitive teams are and who the best players, but we need to put something out there for people to watch. That's what this baseball season would be about. And I'd be ready to watch it.
And I think a change in baseball will be good this year, just to maybe put more eyes on it. I think there'll be more eyes in general because of sports. But the fact that maybe they change it up a little bit, at least I could put some more eyes on it.
And Michael's correct, by the way. The birds have lots of opinions on lots of things.
The bird is quiet when you talk.
Yeah,
right? Was that a dog now?
Now the dog is barking. The dog can't get into this room. So one of the things I do for the TV station is I actually do Zoom interviews. So I interview people, we record it back in Boston, and they use the interview on the other side. So if you watch it on TV, you don't see me, but I'm the one asking the question. So I'm interviewing somebody yesterday, which was a nicer day. There's a window right here that I had open, and a big ass bumblebee comes in. And so typically that was one bark from the dog, but typically the dog is okay. But the dog freaks out because now there's another animal in this room. So I'm sitting here trying to interview this person. The dog is running around, barking at the bumblebee who's over here. A bumblebee's flying around. Those things are making a noise. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just need to let me get the dog out of here. The dog bit me while I'm trying to get the dog out of here because she doesn't want to get away from the bumblebee and it's like pure bedlam in this room. So this is calm in comparison to what was going on in here yesterday.
We got Hook's Wild Kingdom. I wish before the broadcast I set it over under on how many animals would be. Like right now I'm going to set it at 2.5. I don't know. Who knows what's going to come in that backyard?
Yeah. Here's the thing. I was the last one to stay from home. My wife was working from home long before I was, and then the kids were. So by the time I needed to set up a place to work, I was out of options. This was all I had left, this room that nobody was in. It was used for the dog and the birds, and, we stored some stuff in here. So it was all that was left by the time it was my turn to come home.
All right. So another thing that I saw last night, so Derek Jeter obviously made the Hall of Fame. It's probably going to be pushed back because of the pandemic, and they might have it in 2021. So it's interesting because the 2021 class could feature a guy named Curt Schilling. Could also feature a guy named Roger Clemens.
I'm in favor of.
Now, both those players, their chances enhanced a year ago. Mark Burley, Tim Hudson, Torrey Hunter, like Jason Giambi, they're probably not going to move the needle on that end. So if I'm looking at 2021, there could be a class of Derek Jeter, Curt Schilling, and Roger Clemens, possibly. Would that something that would interest you? Like Schilling with Jeter? And I want to get into the 03 ALCS in a minute here, but I don't know. It's kind of weird that like Jeter was supposed to go on himself, and then here we go.
Yeah,
this guy in the spotlight, Curt Schilling.
So I used to care a lot about the Baseball Hall of Fame, and then these last few years they have let in such. I mean, I'm going to use the word mediocre. Honestly, they're not. When you look at Harold Baines, when you look at the one that really broke me was Mike Mussina. Clearly, they're not truly mediocre, right? But judging on the relative Hall of Fame scale, they are to me mediocre. Harold Baines, a great player in that he managed to have such a lengthy career and stick around and put up numbers, But was he ever anybody that you said, oh my God, Harold Baines is coming up to bat. I'm going to wait to go to the bathroom, or I'm going to wait to go get another beer, or whatever it is. You didn't stick around for a Harold Baines at bat.
Oh, my knees bothered me watching him because he was old.
And Mike Mussina, as I have never been shy about, is the one that finally made me say, fine, you're going to put him in, and just go ahead and put anyone in. Because while there are any sort of different metrics by which I think you can judge a Hall of Famer, like Harold Baines is to me even more worthy just by longevity. Longevity in and of itself is an achievement. Mike Mussina never won anything. He never won a Cy Young. He never won a World Series. He didn't win 20 games until the final start of his entire career. And sure, maybe that's just, an arbitrary number, but I think 20 games is important. He never won anything. He won Gold Gloves because when it comes to pitchers and Gold Gloves, people are like, oh, I heard Mike Mussina is a good defensive guy. Let's give him the Gold Glove. And if you didn't win anything, I don't understand how you're a Hall of Famer. And people say, well, yeah, but he was, playing at the same time as Randy Johnson and Greg Maddux and Pedro Martinez and Roger Clemens and all of these guys. And if some of those guys weren't around, well, then he at least would have won a Cy Young. And to which I say, well, sucks for him, because my first kind of litmus test for Hall of Fame is, were you the best in the sport at the time you played for any good portion of time? And Mike Mussina to me was never that. He was very good. I don't deny that. He was amongst the top, 10, 15 pitchers for a good chunk of his career. But he was never the best.
What about Curt Schilling?
Curt Schilling's even worse. Curt Schilling pissed away the first half of his career. Curt Schilling, his time with the Red Sox, the first time with the Astros, and even the beginning of his Phillies career was all true mediocrity. And he talks about that. He says, he didn't try, and he didn't, really, exert himself and dedicate himself to the sport. And that's a ding on him. Even if he recognizes it now, the fact that he let a good chunk of his career go away because he didn't care, I think that matters. And yes, he has tremendous postseason track record, but I think that's just too small. I think it's too small of what is Curt Schilling's career to make him a Hall of Famer. Like Roger Maris hit 61 home runs in the season and set that record for a good long time before somebody broke it. But a single season or even a single group of seasons isn't enough for me. And I also think that Curt Schilling was, for a large part of his career, nowhere close to the best pitcher in baseball. And it has nothing to do with the D-bag that he is now. A lot of people, when you express anything about Curt Schilling that's negative, they're like, oh, you're just a liberal, blah, blah, blah. It has nothing to do with that. I do think he's a D-bag, but that has nothing to do with why I don't think he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Some people, I don't want to bring up Irving Fryer, but that was a guy that had a tough beginning of his career. And then eventually, I don't want to cross sports, but I will say this about Curt Schilling: he was a dominant postseason player. I don't
deny that. I don't deny that at all. I just don't think it's enough. That's all.
Okay.
And this is the thing. We're talking about the Hall of Fame. For me, I am what they call a small hall guy. The fewer, the better to me. I truly want it to be the best of the best of the best. To me, I have no problem going years without inducting someone unless they are truly the very best. And Curt Schilling was an excellent pitcher. He just wasn't the very best at my scale.
Yeah, the comparison I was going with was Chris Carter. Sorry, not Irving Fryer. Chris Carter had a tough early couple of years and then obviously had a Hall of Fame career from there. But where it's apples, baseball and football, you just can't compare it.
Let me say that Morgan 10/22/1980, I love you too.
Yes, Morgan, thank you. And of course, you can continue to chat in. So the other night, dude, I'm watching ESPN, and I turn it on, and the Red Sox have a 5-2 lead in the 0-3 ALCS, and Pedro's pitching, and I mean this. I didn't see the hey, you're done. Like that whole seventh inning ended, you're done. I didn't see any of that at the time. All I saw was Pedro on the mound, 5-2 lead, 8th inning. He got one out. Okay. So he's got the one out, and dude, like that changeup that he throws, the circle change was dropping, dude. Like he was still throwing good stuff in the 8th inning. Then a flare to trot Nixon to the outside, to the right field. Nixon misplays it, lets the ball goes over his head, double. That should have been a catchable ball. People let Trot Nixon off the hook. He was very good here. Don't get me wrong. That was a catchable ball, and there should have been 2 outs. Now, I know there wasn't, but people want to, in the end, it's all Grady Little. It's all him, and there's 5 things I could bring up about Grady. But that could have been 2 outs. Your next hitter, I believe, who had a fantastic at-bat was Bernie Williams. He had a fantastic at-bat, which ends up scoring the run. Matsui hits a bomb down the line. They could have taken Pedro out at any of those times. You could have put Embry against Matsui. He hits a bomb. Luckily, it's a ground rule double, which is runners on second and third, and then Posada hits a little bloop right over the head, and that's what tied the game.
Yep.
So there were multiple opportunities that there should have been 2 outs. There was a misplayed ball in the outfield, and then every hit that happened was with 2 strikes. Pedro had them against the wall, and these guys just had huge clutch hitting. But I will never understand this. And I had Michael Conley on. He's kind of like a research statistician. Embry and Timlin that year were legitimately lights out in the playoffs. Like under a 1 ERA, both the guys. There was 4 times that Grady Little could have taken out Pedro, and he didn't. But I just wanted to bring up that Trot Nixon play. He makes that play in the outfield. There's 2 outs in the 8th inning. And then you have Bernie Williams, Posada, or Matsui, Posada, whatever. But I'm just telling you, I think that Pedro could have got that 3rd out.
Well, I mean, you're basically saying that people have taken a heartbreaking moment in Red Sox history and boiled it down to one thing only and blame that one thing only, which sounds a lot like 1986 all over again, right? Like it all was Bill Buckner's fault.
It was all Grady Little's fault, but it wasn't.
And I used to quiz people when they'd say that, and I'm like, all right, so Bill Buckner makes the play. What happens? They'd be like, well, they win the World Series. I'm like, no, the game was already tied by then. Like it goes to how little people remember. Like that was the last thing that they remember, and so it was all that person's fault. Bill Buckner makes that play, the game is tied, and then they move on, and then who knows where they go from there. But in this case, Bill Buckner was like 1 second. I think I watched that entire inning. Much like you were talking about, people are just watching this stuff over again. The entire inning play out. It was the last 1 second. Grady Little had lots of chances. And, when you talk about statistics had built a pretty solid book on Pedro after the 7th inning. Like, if this were more of a Moneyball era time, or Grady Little were more of a Moneyball era pitcher, or manager, then there was no way that Pedro would be there anymore, because every statistic told you he was dominant and then falls off a cliff. And I think Grady Little just, in that old timey manager sort of way, I've got Pedro, I'm going to dance with the one that brung me kind of thing. He's Pedro. He must be able to do this. He had that chance. But ultimately, I mean, how much are you really emotionally invested in 2003 anymore? Like at the time, it was devastating. It was horrible. And then there was A-Rod and everything that happened after that. And like all of that was part of it, because, Aaron Boone hits the home run. The Yankees move on, and then Aaron Boone gets hurt. And then that's how the Yankees end up with A-Rod after the trade didn't work out to the Red Sox. And it all looked horrible for 2004. But then we know what happens. And the Yankees didn't even win the World Series in 2003. So ultimately, with the Yankees having or the Red Sox having won in 2004 and then 3 subsequent times since, 2003 to me is a blip. It's almost great the way 2003 sets up 2004.
It is. It's a better story. I don't know why. Somebody put it in front of my face. ESPN put it in front of my face. And I'm sitting in, I'm live tweeting it, because I'm like, are you going to take this guy out of the game? At the time, I didn't feel that way. And at the time, I didn't think about the Trot Nixon misplay. And to Pedro's defense, he was still bringing it, dude. And I know you're right. Statistics show Pedro after the seventh or eighth inning, but he was still bringing. His stuff looked good. I don't think the Yankees get enough credit for the way they battled late in that game, and I'll kind of leave it at that. Speaking with it, if the Red Sox did win, do you think they could have beaten the Marlins that year?
So I think that what happened to the Yankees would have happened to the Red Sox, that they basically expended so much in the ALCS that they were basically spent by the time they got to the World Series against a young, Marlins team that hadn't had to fight the way those two teams fought. Yeah, I honestly look at it and say, I don't know that either team ends up winning that World Series. And going into it, you would have thought whichever team comes out of this ALCS, well, they're going to just roll right over this Marlins team. And so retrospect, obviously, it's easy to look at it and see where that was a flawed idea. But I don't know that the Red Sox win in 03 if they get past the Yankees, which again makes 04 even better because it was another obvious, even harder fought 7-game ALCS. And there were concerns, people looking at what happened to the Yankees in 03, that the Red Sox were going to show up against St. Louis and be spent as well. Quite the contrary, they rolled over St. Louis pretty easily. And so it kind of makes an even better bookend to 03. Like, yes, the Yankees got the better of us in 03, but they couldn't close the deal. The Red Sox turned it around in 04 and closed the deal, dominantly. And so it just makes, if you take those two seasons together or those two postseasons together, I think it all looks good for the Red Sox in the end.
Last night on Twitter, Nesson had this thing that goes, can you name someone more clutch than David Ortiz? And I know you got into this big argument about what clutch is and is it even a thing? Is it a statistic? You've carried it around now for a few years. But do you feel like you hear it more and more now? Like,
people don't, they've given up on talking to me about clutch, I think. Mainly because no one ever really listens to what I say about clutch, and they just say, he doesn't believe clutch exists. And then I'll ask simple questions like, well, what is it? I mean, what's your definition of clutch? And then you get 15 different definitions of what clutch is. Is it late and close? Is it in a big moment? Is it whatever it is? And the answer invariably, though nobody will give it to me, is basically it is what I decide that it is. I can look at an event after the fact and say that was clutch. And I don't deny that clutch exists in a moment. Like David Ortiz had enormous number of clutch hits. Can you say, though, that he is definitively a clutch player? And if so, tell me what statistic it is you're using to say that. And maybe he is one. But a lot of people seem to define clutch as somebody who will perform even better in a tough situation or a vital situation or something like that than they would normally. And the example that I always use is the ALCS. I think it was an ALCS against the Detroit Tigers, where David Ortiz had this enormous grand slam in whatever it was, game 2 or 3. Like they had managed nothing, the Red Sox, to that point against the Tigers. They were going nowhere. And they finally got the bases loaded, and David Ortiz comes up and he delivers this enormous home run, grand slam. It really turned the series around. And they're like, see, and then he goes on to the World Series against St. Louis and bats like 800. Like this and people have retroactively remembered it wrong. And they'll tell you that he was just clutch throughout that entire postseason and was a monster. He had one hit against the Tigers, and that one hit was a huge hit. Had one, maybe two, maybe there was one in there. And he came up multiple times with runners on in the 9th inning with an opportunity to turn the tables. And I'm not saying he's required to do it every single time, but don't tell me that his performance against the Tigers was a clutch performance, because he hit like 167. He had an enormous single hit, but it was one hit. And so I use that and I say, tell me how that's clutch if he only got one hit.
What about 2004?
He was huge throughout that entire thing.
Multiple game-winning hits.
Hold on. You can come in and grab something. I'm talking to my friend Joe and the magic of the internet, but you can come in and grab
this
something.
This is 2 days in a row now.
There's another animal coming in.
Here we go. Right?
Yep.
But there's the dog.
Yep, the dog's going outside.
This happened yesterday with Michael Hurley, his daughter, who was, can I talk under the microphone? And it was like, hey. And I'm like, hey. So this is like a daily thing now. Like this is where it's at.
I mean, listen, everybody's home. So the notion that I can exist in this house without you seeing anybody else is probably unrealistic.
All right, I think somebody hit the over already. Because it was 2.5. We got the bird, we got the human, and we have the dog that is running around.
And now Maggie's walking into the shot as well.
Now, there we go. We're way over at this point. Real quick though, is Tom Brady clutch?
So I will say this, that my entire discussion about clutchedness always only pertained to baseball. Just because, and almost baseball hitters, because baked into baseball hitting is the frequency with which you fail is greater than the frequency with which you come through. So Tom Brady absolutely is a guy that's got the ice in the veins in the big moments. And so, yeah, I'd say that Tom Brady is a clutch player.
All right. Wow.
I mean, listen, I have a definition for clutch. My definition for clutch is somebody who is not worried about performing in the big moment. What I don't necessarily draw a line to is whether or not they actually do. And so Tom Brady is a guy who's not worried about it and came through in big moments. But like Johnny Gomes was a guy who wasn't worried about in the big moments, and then he did nothing. And for all we know, Bill Miller of the 04 Red Sox was wildly nervous to hit in a big moment, yet came through. Mm-hmm. So this correlation between they want to be in the big moment and coming through in the big moment don't always go together.
Bobby Kelty, 1 at bat, 1 home run. That's clutch.
Oh, there you go. He's got great performance there
when it comes to the World Series. I've been bringing up this question this week because I find it fairly interesting, but actually it brings up 2 questions. One, commissioners in sports, and I've been doing like this ranking of who the best commissioner in sports is, and I don't know why, but I have Adam Silver at the top. And maybe it's because like he stands out as like this good. Stern's gone, he's taken over, and then I'm like, okay, then where do we go? I mean, is Gary Bettman really like next on the list? Because I actually hate Rob Manfred. I despise the man, and yet when it comes to Goodell, I feel like he does a good job, makes the league money and everything. But when it comes to like an off-field situation, he just does not know how to handle it.
Well, I will certainly say that I would agree with you that Adam Silver's the guy. And while I don't necessarily know that this is what the owners want out of a commissioner, Adam Silver seems like the one guy who actually enjoys the sport that he's in charge of. Like he seems to enjoy basketball and understand basketball and be invested in it. The other 3 guys are all business guys. I get that that's actually the job of a commissioner. So again, that's probably a great resume for those people to have that job. But from a fan's perspective, I like an Adam Silver guy who can be that businessman, but also seems to actually be invested in the sport as a sport and seems to enjoy it. So the other 3, I'm not going to rank in any particular order, other than Rob Manfred doesn't seem actually to care at all about fixing the problems with his sport. The other guys, I guess, seem to address that to the best of their ability. Manfred will do whatever the owners want. The owners don't care about pace of play in baseball, and therefore I put him at the bottom.
All right, one last one because I didn't throw this one at you. But if you had to rank the top quarterbacks in the AFC East,
as they stand right now,
who would be your top quarterback? How would you rank them based off the teams?
What are my 5 choices? Who are we defining?
Well, you have the Miami Dolphins and Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
You have the Patriots with Stidham and Hoyer. You have the Jets with Darnold. And you have the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen.
So this was like I get to. It's not just the 4 who we've determined are the starters, right?
It's who you think are the top 4 or 5 guys. Top 4.
I mean, here's the thing. If I'm Miami, I don't know why I don't start the guy that I just drafted in the first round. So I would put Tua above Fitzy there. I think maybe Sam Darnold's the best, maybe. I guess. Like I don't believe in Josh Allen. I have a hard time getting behind him. I've been clear that I'm not a believer in Jared Stidham yet. And Tua, it's just too early to know. So I think that leaves me with the guy who's helming the Jets.
I think Sam Darnold is the best quarterback in the AFC East. I think we both agree on that. That's something I'm going to bring. I think I might bring that up every week. Every week. Like when the season starts. Hey, who's the best quarterback in the AFC East? And just do that every single week.
I mean, by career numbers, it's probably Ryan Fitzpatrick, but I think we can all agree that that's not real.
So you haven't watched the Jordan documentary yet?
Not even a little bit. I don't even know that I plan to. I probably will at some point.
That's good.
I as I explained on our Weekenders thing, and as I kind of alluded to in this, I was not a huge sports fan in my youth, and therefore I feel like a lot of people who were tuning into that were the people who were living and dying by the Bulls and the magic that was Michael Jordan in the 80s, and that just wasn't me. I was out of the country for like the start of Michael Jordan's career. I wasn't even living in the US. So I missed a lot of that. And so I think that's why I'm less invested in it.
It's good. I'm telling you, there's Dennis Rodman stuff, Scottie Pippen, stuff about Phil Jackson from way back when, Steve Kerr, and some of the things that he came up with, Tony Kukoc, some of the stuff from back then. There's the whole Jordan versus Bird versus Isaiah versus Magic. Telling you, when you get some downtime, like when the kids are, I don't even know if the kids are ever going to be away, but if you ever get some time, watch that and watch our good friend Ted Johnson on the Drew Bledsoe E60 series.
That I'll check out.
That was very good, and when I came away like feeling bad for Drew Bledsoe, I also came away feeling like he was on his way to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Drew Bledsoe, I mean, this is not new ground that either of us have ever covered, but he gets a raw deal in New England. Being replaced by Tom Brady, I think, has defined his career in a way that's really unfair.
Well, the way that ESPN put it was, well, he had this great season with the Buffalo Bills, and they drafted J.P. Losman in the first round.
Yep.
Let him go, and then he goes to the Cowboys, reunites with Parcells, and he's replaced by Tony Romo. Yeah. Like think about that. Everywhere he's gone, he was the guy and then got replaced by someone. And ESPN brought up these statistics that he's a top 15 quarterback of all time. And if he plays those extra 14 games in 02, what kind of numbers does he put up? If he doesn't get benched here, like he could technically have Hall of Fame numbers. He may have won, what else if he won the Super Bowl against Brett Favre, which didn't happen, but these things could have changed his whole course of his career, even if Brady was still with the Patriots.
Yep. Thankfully, he seems to be a really happy guy he doesn't seem to care about this to the level that
now. And that's why you got to watch it, because there's some times where he couldn't get over the fact that he was fighting for his job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, don't forget, he didn't come to the Super Bowl parade in Boston.
That's right. But he did write a nice little letter in the newspaper that everyone loved. All right, so this part here we call Murray's Musings. I'm sure you know about that, but this is kind of where you get to muse a little bit about things that aren't just sports. But I guess this is sports related. Manny Ramirez wants back in baseball. He's got to be on the juice, right, to come back? Because what else can he do?
I have a completely different opinion about this Manny Ramirez thing, because I tweeted about him a couple days ago, maybe even just yesterday, because in the article, one of the reasons it says that he wants to come back and play in Taiwan is because they have great food in Taiwan. And so I made some joke about, you know what, they have Asian restaurants here in the US. And the number of people on Twitter are like, oh, you don't know. Like you would never go, oh, don't go to Italy, just go eat at Sbarro. I'm like, guys, I'm making a joke about Manny Ramirez wanting to play baseball at 48 and the fact that he was one of the quirkiest dudes ever. I don't need to be lectured on the glories of international food. It just made me hate people and hate Twitter. But the fact that Manny Ramirez at 48, one of the reasons he wants to play again is because he wants to go live in a country that has cool food in his mind.
Like he has to play baseball to go eat cool food.
Yeah. I mean, I think he could just take a trip to Taiwan if he wanted to just eat their food.
I'm sure he could afford it.
He did make a lot of money.
I think he can afford. I wonder if he still has that loft in that hotel.
No, he sold that. He sold that a while ago.
Wow. I wonder who bought that one. AMC Movie Theaters. I'm not sure if you heard about this one.
I did.
So obviously you know about now with the pandemic that movies have been going straight to television, and it's been a hit. Like straight to cable. So it's been
video on demand. Basically, they've been going straight to pay-per-view, where rather than the typical whatever $4 or $5 fee, you can rent a movie that was going to be a theatrical release for $20, which seems a lot. But the idea, of course, is someone like me would sit 6 people around the TV and it would cost me less. That's been a huge hit. The fact that a movie studio thinks that that's going to hold when movie theaters are open again, I don't see where that comes from.
So there are some movies I want to see like at a movie theater, but I have issues with the movie theater. I like picking your own seat. I don't like, the cost is a lot. It is a lot, especially if you have a family, dude. You want to bring your whole family. The other thing is that like there's some like the place in Danvers, there's no one taking your order. Like you have to use this kiosk. You know how long it takes for people to pick what they want at a kiosk?
If you want me to be annoyed by things in general, I hate ordering by kiosk. Like McDonald's was the first to do this, and I experienced it at the movie theater. Those came in Danvers right before everything got shut down. So I only experienced it once, but I tried to order from them, and they're like, no, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. I'm like, are you kidding me? Give me a popcorn and a drink. I'm not going to go touch screen it over there. And they're like, no, sorry, you have to.
And then they're like, hey, number blah 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 blah, and like they're rude. Like it's you know what I want? I want someone to say, hey, what would you like? I want a popcorn and I want a drink. All right, cool. Here you go. You want butter with that? Yes. Hand it to me. I give them the cash. We just do an exchange. You know what I mean? I keep my ticket stub so I can hand it to the usher. Like that's the way I like it. But anyways, yeah. So what happened was they made so much money. The cut is $77 million to the movie theaters. So like what was it, Trolls or something?
Yeah.
They made it like over $360 million or whatever. So like they gave their cut, but going forward, they're like, yeah, we're just gonna start doing this. So now they're boycotting any Universal movies. Vin Diesel very upset about this because of the Fast and Furious franchise that's happening. But this brings up another discussion. Like, I don't know, how about drive-in movie theaters? How about bring these bad boys back?
Well, there are not a lot of them left, but people have been talking about this, that they're gonna open these up.
Social distancing, you can whatever you want. All I'm trying to say is the movies is going to be a changed experience when things somewhat get back to normal.
And the thing, I'm with AMC on this because it's a business model. Like we get it first for whatever, 3 weeks, a month and a half, whatever, and then you get to do other things with it.
90 days.
If you've got us competing with you right from the outset, then you're taking money out of our pockets. So I'm with AMC, and Universal will buckle because I don't think it'll work anyway. My thing is I don't love drive-ins. The quality of the picture is bad. If you're not allowed to have the car on, if you've got we have a minivan, and we went to a drive-in theater in New Hampshire this past summer, and we put the back of the minivan up and had the kids, and they're like, no, you have to put that down because people behind you can't see. I'm like, well, where the hell are my kids going to sit? Like you can't, and if you've got a big car, like a pickup truck, you cannot be above the roof of your car in any way. So you can't sit on the roof. You can't do any of that because you're blocking the people behind you.
Interesting. I tailgated at the last one. Had chairs and a table and blasted my radio.
Yeah. So the drive-in experience is cool once in a while as a regular thing. It's not something I'm on board with.
You can't get beer at the drive-in. Hard pass.
All right.
Somebody says so. Well, I mean, I don't really go to the movies.
Pretty sure you can bring your own.
Yeah, but I don't go to the movies to drink because I won't have to go pee. You know what I mean? I want to watch the whole movie. I don't want to drink booze and then.
Well, the advantage of the drive-in is you can walk to the bathroom while watching the movie.
True.
There you go.
I guess I didn't even think about that. So I've been Gronk and Rodman. A lot of stuff's come up with Rodman lately, and we know about Gronk. Both of them have done wrestling, and Rodman recently said that he would wrestle Gronk. Is there any comparison between these two dudes at some point? Like, I know Robin's the greatest rebounder of all time. Gronk in one of the greatest defenders of all time. Gronk's the greatest tight end of all time. Both of them like to party. One's kind of a bad guy, where the other's goofy. But are there any comparisons, in your opinion, between these two
No,
guys?
not really, because I don't think for all of the antics that Rob Gronkowski has ever engaged in, it was ever a draw away from the team. Like when it came time to play the game, Rob Gronkowski was serious as they come. And I don't know that the same can be said of Dennis Rodman, who I think was a distraction to his team. And Rob Gronkowski is either the or amongst the very best to ever play at his position. And I don't think you can say that about Dennis Rodman. So I just think Rob Gronkowski is much more the player than Dennis Rodman is or was.
Would you ever watch a wrestling match between the two of them?
Well, I think you know, Joe, that I don't care a lick about wrestling. So no, I wouldn't watch a wrestling match with anybody in it. And yes, I'm sitting here wearing Andy Wong's very generous Kowloon gift, and while a member of the Kowloon crew, I have opted out of the wrestling portion of being a member of that crew, and have never engaged in the wrestling part of what you guys do.
I'm telling you, you'd love it. You'd have a blast. We'd get you a sign. Maybe we could have say something like "Cena's not clutch."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love it the way my brothers told me I would love it if I went to a Rush concert with them. They're like, yeah, you just have to experience it while you're there. You may not like it from afar, but until you go, you won't really know. Yeah, no, I didn't love it any more there than I thought I would. And I don't think I'd love your WrestleMania any more being there than I do completely ignoring it as I do now.
UFOs have been confirmed. I don't know if they're. I don't know if they're aliens, but there are some identified flying objects according to the governor.
Yeah,
but you're not believing it.
Well, here's the thing: like everyone's getting all worked up about those videos that were released this week. Those videos are from like 10 years ago when we saw them. We saw them back then. It's just that they hadn't been directly released by the government. So all we got this week was confirmation of the videos that we've been seeing for years. We don't know what they are. I think it is far more likely that it's high-tech military stuff that nobody knows about rather than things from another planet.
Okay. I'm going to keep this one going to this UFO stuff. And then I was thinking about it recently. Like, if there are UFOs now, like, there's a pandemic. Are they like, where is everybody? Right? Or should we get out of here? Like, I've been wondering about that. Finally, this is how we wrap up the show each week. Obviously, we're all in quarantine. I call this segment Quarantine.
Okay.
Quarantine. So, first place you will go when the pandemic ends.
There are a lot of choice, and it's a ways away. So I think the first place I'm going to go is to get a haircut, because this stuff you can't really tell here, but it's my head of lettuce here is starting to get a little out of control. So I think that, but I also desperately miss restaurants. I desperately miss sitting down at a table with people, getting food. So it's either, maybe I'll combine them together, get a haircut followed by a restaurant visit.
Oh, good answer. Because and I know the women right now are can't go see their hairdressers. Can't go.
Yeah, I don't color it, but if I did, that would be a further problem.
Quarantine snacks, Marshall Hook.
What have I been snacking on? My wife makes banana bread a lot. We're going through a lot of bananas, and we don't get quite through them every time. And so she's been making a lot of banana bread that I've enjoyed. But for the most part, I've stuck to my new kind of dietary restrictions while here. So I've not even been able to enjoy the high-end snacks or the extra snacks that a lot of people do, because I'm not exercising because the gym is closed. I'm not running because all my 5Ks were canceled. So the least I can do is keep eating the way I'm supposed to eat.
All right. Moving on here. What shows have you been binging, or do you binge any shows?
So I watched the first season of Ozark, and I enjoyed it. And then I got my wife to watch it. Finally, she caught up with me. So we're now making our way through the second season, to be followed by the third season of that. I completely caught up from zero to watching everything that was available on Netflix of Better Call Saul, which was an excellent program. I can't watch the current season because that's not on Netflix yet. We're going to get caught up on what's the Star Wars one on Disney, Mandalorian.
Oh, I haven't watched that yet.
And I will tell you, there is one new show that I have fallen deeply in love with, and this is the kind of show that people can make fun of me for. But I don't think I ever would have watched it, but I was bored, and Hulu was pushing it like it was their top banner, like, watch this show. I'm like, fine, I'll watch this show. Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist. It's an NBC show. It involves singing. It is not something that I would have thought, but I have deeply enjoyed this program. My daughter and I watch it together, and now my wife is watching as well. And one other one, me and a couple of my sons have been watching that Lego reality show, Lego Masters, which is done. We haven't finished it. So I'm trying to find things we can watch together, which is really the difference. Like before, we would all do our own thing. We're stuck in this house together, so I'm trying to find things that I can watch with them. And that's why we're kind of doing some new things.
Very nice. I'll give one recommendation. Might be a little sophomoric for you, but it's a show about Little Dicky the rapper.
Okay.
It is called Dave.
All right. Oh, wait, I've seen that. That's on my list of things to check out as well.
Really? I didn't think that you'd like that. It's about
I don't know. I haven't watched a second of it yet. Like there's another show I started watching a couple days ago that I made it halfway through and I gave up. I'm just like, I can't watch this. So I'll try a lot of things. It's just a question of how far I made it.
Well, Little Dicky's a Jewish rapper, and he's good, but it's about his life, and I thought it might be sophomoric for you, but hope maybe you would like it.
I watch a lot of crap. That's fine. I'll watch any. I'm not above a guilty pleasure.
So I know you're a father, and there's got to be some sort of frozen food. Like if the wife's not around, nobody's cooking. Like, is there a frozen food that's like your go-to?
So neither. Yes, there are two things, and they go all the way back to my childhood. Really, steakums.
Oh wow, I haven't heard of those in years.
I love the steakums. And I got my daughter into them as well. They cook like that, by the way. They go from frozen to done in literally about 30 seconds. It takes no time whatsoever. And Elio's pizza, the kind that come in the rectangles. I love the Elio's pizza. And under my new dietary restriction, one big rectangle is a perfect meal for me.
Love Elio's. Got to be in the toaster oven, though, or the oven.
No, oven at 600. I blast it.
Yeah, can't microwave any of those.
No.
Finally, Marshall, The Weekenders on YouTube TV or YouTube, sorry. Weekends at 1 and 2 p.m.
Yep. Saturday and Sunday.
Tell everybody about The Weekenders.
So it's a lot of us who don't have a lot to do right now, getting together and basically doing YouTube live just to kind of stay in practice. Johnston and Flynn are pretty much every Saturday at 1. Joe Murray, you've got this Saturday at 2 o'clock spot with a couple other people. Ted Johnson and I will be back Sunday at 1. I'm still piecing together the schedule for what Sunday at 2 will look like. I know Mason Souza will be in there, but I'll tweet it out. And then, because we do it on YouTube Live, when we're done, there you sit there and they're available. So you can catch up on all of them. Just like you would binge watch TV, you can binge watch hours at a time of us sitting here talking about whatever.
And if you have a Chromecast or any other device that will stream from your phone,
put it up on the big TV.
You can put it right up on your television. And I have done that.
55 inches of me is a glorious thing, I'll tell you.
All right, he's Marshall Hook, 98.5 The Sports Hub, The Weekenders, Channel 7, The Bird in the Back, The Dog, The Family.
Yep.
This has been a solid hour and 18 minutes. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I have enjoyed my time here, Joe. Thank you.
All right, Marshall, we will catch up in the future. Thank you very much for your time. Kowloon is always great. It looks very good on you, by the way.
Andy, thank you very much. This is from my friend Andy, and you can buy them online from the Kowloon.
There you go. And I'm curious what it looks like with the hood on for you, though. Like, are you a hood guy?
I'm not. I don't really wear the hoods up very often.
Yeah.
So I don't know that this would be a good look for me.
Yeah.
I don't wear hats. I don't wear hoods.
You look like
I feel like I look like the Emperor from Star Wars.
I was gonna say you look like the Emperor from Star Wars.
Feel. I don't remember his line. Feel the hate, whatever it is he said.
That made me laugh. Might have been the best part of the broadcast. All right, he's Marshall Hook. Marshall, thank you very, 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 very much on just sitting here this week. We'll disconnect and I will catch up with you this weekend for the weekenders, buddy. All right, thank you, Marshall, for joining the show today. That was funny at the end there. That was good stuff. Just sitting here on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes. Once this ends, I'll download it, pop everything up. You can hear Marshall again. Just search "Just Sittin Here," and again, YouTube, iTunes, and on Spotify. Tomorrow we got Andrew Raycroft, former Bruins goalie. This is going to be some good stuff. I have a friendly relationship with him. Want to go back in time when it comes to the Bees, his trade at Tuukka where he went from there, and now he's with the Nesson doing Bruins, and we'll get his thoughts on what's going to happen with the NHL season. So should be a good way to wrap up the week tomorrow, and then we got a boatload of guests the following week. So I'm going to do this until we can't anymore. And again, I'll wrap up some wrestling stuff. I'll be on with Jay Stu and Sarge this weekend for their podcast, Wrestling Inside the Ropes. But that's it for me today. So my thanks to Marshall Hook. I'm Joe Murray, just sitting there. Again, check it out. Spotify, YouTube, iTunes. I'll be back tomorrow with former Bruins goalie Andrew Raycroft from Nesson on Just Sitting Here. We'll talk to you then.